Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Michel's Book Corner, where every week we take a look at two books, combine them with a single theme to give you like a little bit of an angle in which you might want to read these books, so that during this time of coronavirus, where we're all told to stay at home, and hopefully you are all staying at home, we have a chance of like maybe developing an interest in something else, and kicking coronavirus in the face by using this time that we have to stay at home to, develop ourselves a little bit more. So that's what we're doing today. We have two new books. We have a brand new theme. Today's theme is world building through actions. So last time we talked about perspective through characters. Today we're talking about world building through action. So what do I mean with that? Well, if you want to tell a story in a book or in any piece of media or any way that you want to tell a story, but today for a book, if you want to do that, you need to set it in a world in which your story is happening. Now, that world could be like our own world in the exact same way, with the same laws of physics, the same societal rules, the same constructs that we have here, or it can be completely different. It can be in a completely different time, it can be in a completely different place. Doesn't matter. That's all up to you. However, you are going to have to explore your world, put your world out there for the reader in order for them to get captivated by your story. Because if I don't know what rules apply in your universe, then I don't know what to care for. What's normal, what's weird, what is special, what is impossible, what is possible. If I don't know that, then I don't know what the stakes are. So it's very important that when you're telling a story, you make clear what is the world in which this story is taking place to your reader. So both of these books do it very well. Both of these books are great world building books. And the interesting thing is that both these books are written in a future version of Earth. Both versions of Earth have drastically changed from the time that we were used to, or the authors were used to when they wrote this book. And even though in both these books the main characters go through their own struggles, I believe that these books are very much set to explore the world and not necessarily like the characters. Because even though there is some character depth in there and the characters do have their own little mini arcs, basically what you see is they're more like devices to show you what the world looks like. And that's why I want to go over these books today. I think they're very interesting books. So let's begin with I Am Legend from Richard Matheson. I didn't know about it beforehand, and when I first saw it, I was kind of like, I don't know how to feel about this, because if you look at the front, you can kind of already tell that this is like a zombie apocalypse kind of story, which in today's media we have so many of. However, the thing is that this book is actually the book, or one of the books, that actually made the modern apocalypse genre what it is. Because this thing was written, I think, in the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken, and it's really, really good. And basically, many of the big apocalypse franchises and movies have taken inspiration from this book. Where most of the modern apocalypse stories tend to lose my interest is that they set something up. They set up this premise of, oh, something's happened. They're zombies, and they kill you and they turn you into a zombie. They'll explain that, but then they end that, and they'll never go on with that in order to show you more of the interpersonal drama between the characters, or the gore and the killing. And they'll very rarely continue to explore the world, because the more that they explore of the world and the more they state as fact and the more that they give away from what works in that universe, the more they close off, and they really are afraid of closing things off, since they always want to go on to the next sequel and next sequel and the next sequel. And yeah, that really tires me. I don't like that. However, this book doesn't do that. This is actually, would you believe it, a book with a beginning and an end. And honestly, it is really, really great. So this book actually from the start to the end will continue to reveal more and more about the world. And at the end, you're quite satisfied with everything that's told you. The story of I Am Legend is centered around Robert Neville, who, as far as we know, is the last human survivor of a vampire apocalypse. So through the story, you figure out how exactly is he set up, how does he deal with being alone, how does he deal with his past of losing his wife and his kid, but also it finds a very good starting point and continues to take you on a very interesting journey. This right here, you kind of start out with the same knowledge that like Robert has. You and Robert know the same thing. Like, they're vampires. It's bad, but you don't know much more. And slowly but surely, like, you will learn to understand more and more. So like, it starts at a perfect threshold that you know about the same, and then you learn more and more and more. And we'll never drone on for too long with having the same knowledge. So like, at the start of the book, like, you'll figure out that he's like driving stakes into the hearts of like vampires to kill them. That's the only way to kill them. Guns don't work. However, throughout the book, you figure out with him, he figures out and you read it, he figures out like why the stakes actually work and why the bullets don't work. And like, those interesting things, like, that's a really, really good gradation of like introducing knowledge and building like the world out throughout actions, instead of just like telling you straight up at the start or not even explaining it at all. Also, it works really well with perspective. Think about this as though like, if a vampire is still alive, how would they experience the world, and how would they experience the world with a lone person like Robert Neville, the lone survivor who is constantly going out and killing them. I would definitely recommend this one. It's not a really hard book to read. It's very, like, it's cool. If you really want to read this as like a world building thing, it's even more interesting. I really, really like this. I would definitely recommend I Am Legend. Yeah, go for it. Furthermore, we have our second book, which is A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Yeah, this was quite a book. First of all, the really interesting thing about this book is that it was actually written like in the 1930s, I believe, which means that this was written right between like the Second World War and the First World War. Probably I should say these two names like around. So basically what this book is a description of like the future. What will the future look like in a couple of hundred years? That's what Aldous Huxley sets out to do, to describe the brave new world. One thing you gotta realize when it comes to this book is that this book was written in times where, just after the Roaring Twenties, I think it was 1932 that this came out, American consumerism was like really big in the Western world. So like, you had movies, you had telephones, you had like global factories and like factory like assembly lines coming into being, which were like a big change to anything that'd gone before it. And we also had like a very recent world war, which kind of like brought people's attention to, wow, you know, we can have a war with the entire world and can be really, really devastating. So with these things in mind, like, you had a lot of people looking at the future, like, what will the future be? Like, what will this world turn out into? And that is what Brave New World kind of sets out to do. What got me really interested in this book was actually the premise of the book. The book is set about 500 years into our future, and society has changed a lot, especially around consumerism. Like, the entire world is kind of built around people are born to like constantly consume things so that they power the economy, and then like they can work, and then because like everyone buys things, everyone can work, and then everyone can buy things and everyone can work and everyone's happy. Kind of that's the idea behind it. The idea is that like everything in this world is completely controlled. So entire society is controlled. Like, children aren't raised by parents. Like, the entire idea of family doesn't exist anymore because children are quite literally made in factories, which is really interesting described in like the first chapter. Like, they start off really hard with that, telling exactly how children are created, how they're made, and how they're already like registered like a class of citizen that they'll be. And if they're going to be an alpha, they're going to get the best treatment in growing up. And if they're going to be a gamma, then they're going to like get less oxygen, and they're going to like be affected with rays, so they'll turn out to be a lesser human being. What happens is that they come across this woman in the wild, because they're also like, it's only a certain part of the world that has this, and there are also like reservations where they're like people that live outside of the society, and they find a woman there that used to live in the society, but they lost her, and they find her again, and she's gotten a child called John Savage. And John Savage is a savage because he's like from the people that live in the controlled world, but he's never been there. So like, he's being introduced into this world, and that is so cool to see. It is really crazy to see, like, because he's a little bit more like us. Like, he's a little bit more like you'd be, because he didn't grow up with this entire idea of being conditioned and like liking this one thing. They also have this crazy thing where it's like their entire idea is that like there is never any struggle in life. Like, we are making the world so smooth that you'll always be happy, and if there are some problems, you just take drugs. Like, they have this drug called Soma, which is like that you take it and then, well, your problems go away and there's no side effects and it's all great. So like, everyone just at the end of the day just drugs themselves and just like goes off to holiday. Honestly, like the story itself, the struggle of the like the characters, the personal development of the characters themselves aren't really all that strong. Like everyone kind of stays to be a flat character. There's a little bit of progression in there, but it does such a good job at world building. Like this entire book is world building. I would definitely recommend this book if you want to like really go into the theme of like world building for actions, the entire world building idea. It's a little bit harder than I Am Legend, but definitely a good read and definitely a great idea of like how did someone in the 1930s think about how like the world in the future could be. So actually, like, great read. I like it. Anyway, that is it for this week's Book Corner. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you liked Brave New World and I Am Legend. They're going to be put aside because next week we have the following two books. We have the Nicomachean Ethics. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly in English. English, yeah. And we have 12 Rules for Life by Jordan B. Peterson, and this, of course, is by Aristotle. Yes, we're going to be doing some Greek philosophy. I hope you're ready for ancient philosophy. We going hard from like I Am Legend, Zombie Apocalypse to like full-on ancient philosophy. But yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a harder book. This one is a little bit of an easier book. These are the two books for next week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Michel's Book Corner. Let me know if you're reading any of these books and if you read them, like what you thought of them. And yeah, I will see you all next week for another episode of Michel's Book Corner. Have a great week, guys.